next, the concept that I'm going to introduce is degrees of freedom. So the degrees of freedom is the number of independent, the definition of degrees of freedom is the number of independent samples needed to make up a sample statistic, right? So statistic is something like a sample mean or sample variance, sample proportion. Okay, we all call that as any measure based on the sample, we call that as statistic. So any measure about the population, we call that as parameter. So here, how many independent samples is needed to make up a sample statistic? That is called the degrees of freedom. See, for example, here, so you have 5 balloons are there, and you're asking to choose 5 children to choose these 5 balloons. So the first child comes and he picks up whichever color he wants, all right? And the second child comes. So now you have 4 balloons, and it has to be distributed for 4 children. So you're choosing the next child and ask him to pick the next balloon. So the next child also has his freedom of choice. And the third child also has the freedom of choice, and the fourth child also has out of 2, the child can choose 1. But when it comes to the fifth child has to take whatever is available there. So the fifth child, is losing its freedom or her freedom of choice. Okay, so she has to accept whatever is there. Okay, so out of 5 children, only 4 has that freedom of choice. All right, and the last child has to accept whatever is available there. So that is why whenever you have 10 samples, only 9 samples can be chosen independently, all right, and the last 10th sample has to be included automatically. So whenever you have n samples, only n minus 1 samples has the freedom of choice, right? You can choose it independently. The last one, the nth sample has to be included automatically into the sample. Okay, so that's why it's a degrees of freedom. So we use this degrees of freedom equal to n minus 1. Okay, it depends on the problem, n minus 1. So this is actually a physics concept. So if you ask, for human beings, if I ask you to turn your hands, the hand cannot freely move all the 360 degrees. Right, it can move up to 90 or maximum little bit. Maybe you can slight move after that, right? But you cannot turn 360 rotation. Similarly, your neck, when it comes to neck, you can't freely move it all the 360 degrees. Whereas the robotic technology, which has the ability to move all the 360 degrees. Okay, so it's actually a physics concept, but the statisticians, they borrowed it, okay, and they applied it in a statistical theory. Okay, so that's how it's called degrees of freedom. The name has got the degrees of freedom.